Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Koki Riley in 15 minutes. LSU baseball starts its Texas week coming up at 7 o'clock tonight against Dallas Baptist. We'll get a report from East Texas with Koki, who will be there throughout the duration of this trip for LSU. We got What If Wednesday coming up. LSU atop the SEC recruiting rankings by On3 Sports. We'll tell you about that at 1:45. Matthew Bruni talking hoops at 2. Pro Football Focus gave the Saints dream offseason in hour 2. We'll get to some of that, and then my SEC baseball power rankings will be coming at you every single Wednesday at 2:30, so we'll get to those an hour and a half from right now. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Let's get it rolling the same way we do every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
The number 5 team in the country came into the PMAC last night, and the game went exactly the way anyone who has paid attention to either team would have seen it go. I think that happens less frequently than we think. I make a living here sitting down, breaking down football games, breaking down basketball games, breaking down baseball weekends, baseball games. And I give you kind of some keys. I give you some thoughts. I give you some things that I think you might see and some keys. It rarely goes right according to script. Last night in the PMAC went exactly according to script. Tennessee is perhaps the best defensive team in the country. They held LSU to 59 points. LSU has been a good defensive team this year, and Tennessee doesn't score great. And Tennessee didn't score great. They had 26 points at halftime. They finished at 65 points, and they got those 65 points by shooting a robust, where's that statistic for you? Field goal percentage, 41% from the floor. So that all went according to plan. And oh, by the way, LSU is small, and they stink at rebounding. And Tennessee absolutely, utterly, and completely dominated LSU on the backboards. They had 44 total rebounds to LSU's 28. But more importantly, Tennessee had 17 offensive rebounds in the game that led to 27 second chance points. Listen to this statistical breakdown. You want to know what's important in a basketball game? How about this? LSU played the 5th-ranked team in the country last night in the PMAC. 5th-ranked team in the country. LSU had a higher field goal percentage in the game, 41.2% to 41.1%. Basically the same, what and what. LSU made more threes than Tennessee, 7-6. LSU had a higher free throw percentage. Now, both teams stunk at it, but it was 63% to 62%. LSU was better. LSU had 10 turnovers, Tennessee had 11. LSU's bench had 8 points, Tennessee's had 6. LSU won all those statistics. Field goal percentage, made threes, free throw percentage, fewer turnovers, outscored them on the bench. Got crushed on the glass. And that was all that mattered. Got outscored by 21 in second chance points, and that was all she wrote in a 6-point game that really wasn't even that close late in the game. I think LSU was very much in the game with like 8 minutes to go. Tennessee controlled the last 8 minutes. They went on a run to push the lead to 14. LSU chipped away with like 28 seconds left. Victorious Miller had some free throws late on an obstruction call that allowed him to get to the line, but LSU was never really a threat to win the game. Tennessee led the game for 34 minutes. LSU led it for a minute and a half. So, look, it was not a shocking game by any stretch. It was actually exactly according to script. And we're not going to sit here and break down this game for 15 minutes, what LSU could have done better, what LSU can look for, what's there to build on for this team, what could be next. We all know. They're not playing for the NCAA tournament. They're not playing for an NIT berth. This season is essentially run its course. They're going to play a couple more regular season games. They're not going to win them. They're going to go to the SEC tournament. They may win a game. They may not. They're not going to make a run. That is decided this is not a team right now that's good enough in the best league in the country to compete on a nightly basis. Are they playing better over the last 3 weeks? Yes. Have they completely cut down the turnovers that absolutely plagued them for half the SEC play? Yes, they have. But it's unimportant because they don't win. And ultimately, that's why you show up. So as I look at this, there's really only one thing to truly point to that could be of any real interest. And it's the fact that LSU has very, very much turned to its younger players. Now, as I've said a bunch of times, like there's no guarantee that LSU is going to have these younger players on the roster next year. They may have all three, they may have two, they may have one, they may have none. There's no way for us to know sitting here right now. I don't talk to Victorious Miller very often. I don't talk to Curtis Givens very often. I don't talk to Robert Miller very often. Every once in a while they come to a post game. Generally speaking, they don't. It's usually one player. I'm just going off of the era that we're in right now in collegiate athletics where guys transfer all over the place. And right now, LSU, to me, it doesn't seem like the hottest place to play basketball in the country. Look at the PMAC last night. You're playing the 5th-ranked team in the country. It's less than half full. That's what LSU basketball is right now. And if these guys, these three, are traveling around to these places in the SEC that are packing their arenas, Oklahoma notwithstanding, you could look around and go, man, PMAC's not exactly rocking right now. I get it, but that's a story for a different day. But the fact is that they are playing these freshmen far more minutes, and they're actually growing up a little bit. Victorious Miller led LSU in scoring last night with 17 points. He made 3 of his 6 threes. He shot 6 of 11 from the floor. He did not turn the ball over in 27 and a half minutes of play. No turnovers. That's solid. Curtis Givens is not a big playmaker at this point in his career, but he's given LSU some pretty solid minutes. He made 2 more threes in the game last night, and he's now in the starting lineup. He played 28 minutes. Jordan Sears played 15. And then you got Robert Miller, who, when I watched Robert Miller play in November and December, I watched a young deer who had no idea what to do with its legs. Like he was a complete non-factor early in the season. I was kind of looking going, I know this guy's a lot taller than the high school guys he was playing with, but I'm not sure why the ranking was as high as it was in the recruiting rankings because he's not really an impactful player right now. Well, he has grown up, and it started in that game at Arkansas, and he continued it last night. Tennessee's got a good front court. Robert Miller only played 19 minutes because he got in foul trouble, so that's half a game, 19 minutes. He finished the game with 9 rebounds, and he made both of his field goal attempts. So if you extrapolate that out for another 15 minutes or so, you're talking about a guy that would have, 8 points and 15 rebounds against one of the best teams in the country. Like, that's something. I just don't know if it's going to be something that gets built on at LSU or not. And I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting I know that LSU's 3 freshmen are on the way out. Matty Mann's track record is the opposite of that. Jalen Reed stuck around for 3 years. Tyrell Ward got to the first exhibition game before he decided to step away. Mike Williams came back. You've seen Derek Fountain hang around for a long time. Like, he's had a lot of folks stick around. It's not like it's complete mass exodus, rebuild the whole thing every year. So I don't know. But I'm not going to break down much of what LSU needs to do the rest of the way because they've lost too many games for it to matter. I'm not going to look at the NIT bracketology and see what the SEC strength of schedule means for LSU's chances to sneak in the back into the NIT. Nobody gives a rip. But the basketball program is at an inflection point right now where they've decided we're going to spend more money and try to put together a more competitive roster next year. We've already seen that reported. We understand that's the direction LSU is going to go. That's got to start by spending some money to retain some of the guys that you want to keep on next year's team. You don't have that option with Cam Carter, but you have that option with Curtis Givens, with Robert Miller, with Victorious Miller. And those 3 guys, Victorious Miller did score a little bit in the pre-conference. But Givens and Miller didn't really do anything. They're getting better. They're not great, but they're getting better. And you take that trio and you pair it with a signing class that's got 3 signees that are once again top 70, and then you got to go to the transfer portal and get some big fish. The same big fish that Bama's getting, that Tennessee's getting, same big fish that the teams that are winning are getting. You got to try to do that. And you got to do it with money. So, again, not much to talk about over the next 3 weeks. But it is obvious if you're watching the games. And if you're not, I get it. Trust me. It's not a lot of fun to watch your team get their brains beat in most nights. But if you're watching, you can tell that LSU's freshmen are playing better than they were. No guarantee how good they'll be next year. But it is a stride for that group of players, while this team makes very few in terms of winning basketball games. LSU loses 65-59 in the PMAC last night. They'll travel to the Hump in Starkville coming up on Saturday. All right, let's take a timeout. That's our Genesis opening drive. When we come back, we'll chat with Koki Riley. He is in Texas. LSU and Dallas Baptist tonight. Very much looking forward to that matchup between two of the 5 teams in the country that have made the last 10 NCAA tournaments, LSU and Dallas Baptist. We'll talk about that with Koki coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, closet space may not be important to some, but it is very important to a lot, my wife being one of them. And she moved into the house that I was living in. It was our first home. It was a great place to bring our firstborn. However, the closet situation, not good. And I didn't really care, but she did. And I started to realize when we had coats in different rooms and different articles of clothing jammed in closets elsewhere that you had to go find, and it just wasn't a great setup. And so when we decided to move, we were like, well, we need to go ahead and prioritize closet space. It's something we haven't had. It's something we know we need. You don't have to move to make that happen. David Duvall and his team can do it for you. You can use your existing closet space a little bit more efficiently and effectively to clear that clutter. Or you can just put in a new closet. David Duvall and his team are licensed contractors. They can do all of that for you. If you're worried about paying for that, there are financing options available. 0% for 18 months, same as cash if you qualify. Start that process with that free consultation day. That part doesn't cost you a cent. David comes over, you tell him what you're looking for, he tells you what he can do. You decide to move forward with that process. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Competition level cranking up just a touch here for the LSU baseball squad. They hit the road earlier this week. They'll take on Dallas Baptist in Arlington tonight at 7 o'clock. Then up north to Frisco, where they'll take on Kansas State, Nebraska, and Sam Houston State in the Frisco College Classic up at Ryder Park in Frisco, Texas. Koki Riley will be there for all of it. He joins us now from Texas. Koki, thanks for the time. How are you?
Doing pretty well. How's it going?
It's going quite well. Let's talk about LSU's offense over the weekend. They were good on the bookends, but had a little bit of a lull there in the middle of the action, specifically in the first game of that doubleheader on Saturday. What did you see from those struggles from LSU?
A lot of pop-ups.
Yeah.
I think at one point they hit a pop-up or a fly-out on 7 straight at-bats, which I don't even know if I've ever seen that before. And, you know, just being overly aggressive on not just swinging at balls, but just swinging at stuff that you can't really drive. And that's the Jay Johnson MO. It's don't swing at anything you can't drive and it really impact the baseball with. And sometimes that's going to depend on who the pitcher is. And that's why Jay Johnson keeps on talking about plan. When he talks about plan, it's not just one plan. It's the plan for whatever pitcher's in the game, and what does that pitcher do that allows you to be the most successful against it? Like what are the pitches, or when he makes a mistake, what does that look like, and how can you drive that pitch? So I think that's kind of what he's talking about when he talks about plan, and they definitely went outside their plan for a good 10 innings there. I mean, only 10, 11 innings really. They had 3 hits, 10 strikeouts, no runs, and against a team like Omaha, that just can't happen. So it was definitely a worrying stretch for them, and they kind of lost their heads there for more than a hot second. But they've played really good baseball since.
How do you feel about the offense as a whole? We all realize how early it is, but just big picture, how do you feel about it?
Still probably a little better than last year. I still think they have some more guys who are just know how to hit. They have pretty good swings, pretty good hit tools, I'd say. You have a little more confidence in that because of the guys that are returning. When you add in a guy like Daniel Dickinson as well. Like, I feel a little bit better on that aspect of it. The power is still a concern to me. I think they've played more games than they have home runs so far. So I still have trouble seeing who that 15 plus home run guy is going to be next to Jared Jones, and they probably need a couple of them, and I don't even know who one of them could be. I guess there's a lot of different candidates. We just haven't seen it so far this year. Again, it's very early, but I'd say that's probably my biggest question mark with the offense. Where are they going to get the power? Because not just because power has been an important part of their offense the last couple of years. That's very true, and that's definitely a part of this. But you need to have power to just take advantage of the smaller parks that you're going to be playing in the SEC. And when the weather gets warm, the teams are going to be, rolling out 2 and 3 and, grand slams out there, 2-3 run home runs, grand slams, all that sort of stuff. So once the weather gets warmer, you need to take advantage of that stuff. And so far, they haven't so far.
One of the guys that will is Jared Jones, and Derek Curiel seems very comfortable hitting right in front of him in the 2 slot. I'm curious who you think works best at the leadoff spot in front of those two, because they are the 2 spots in the order that haven't really moved.
Yeah, I think that's going to be kind of connected to the conversation of who protects Jared behind him in the order, right? And I kind of circled down Dickinson as the guys what are you going to do? What are you going to do with him? Are you going to have him behind Jared and be that really good contact hitter with a little bit of pop behind him in the order, or are you going to have him as the table setter at the top of the order? Because I think he works in either role, and it's just a matter of what they want to do there, do with him there. And I think Ashton Larson's another good candidate for this, but Ashton Larson still has to play enough, and that's not to say that he's not good enough. It's just more of how deep they are in that corner outfield spot and what they kind of want to do there. So, again, we'll see. But I think Larson's a really good candidate for it because he's just so good at getting on base and putting the ball in play. And it's really hard to just break him out. And they need a potential run producer, and they need guys who can get on base. And I think Dickinson and Larson are 2 good candidates for it. Whether who leads off and who bats fourth, who knows. But I think those 2 guys are kind of good candidates for those spots.
Let's talk some pitching. Anthony Ionson's line score was really good on Saturday in LSU's loss, but he was unscored upon in his 6 innings of work. What did you make of his second start?
Yeah, even better than his first start, and I think that's fairly promising given that I think Omaha was better than Purdue Fort Wayne. So yeah, he's a rock. It's hard to just sort of go into crazy detail of how much better he was in his second start than he was in his first, because I think he's kind of the same guy every single time out because he throws a litany of strikes. He throws so many strikes, and it's a fastball that's low to mid 90s, and he's got a couple of breaking balls. The curveball's pretty interesting, and I like the slider quite a bit. And he also has the occasional changeup, so it's 4 pitches. Pretty much all of them are for strikes. It's not the most explosive stuff, and I wouldn't say he has the most jump out at you sort of stuff among the starters at the very least. But at the same time, he's just kind of a rock, and as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a pretty reliable 5 to 6 innings for them every weekend. And your thoughts on Shores in the Game 3 spot? He was fantastic. And he's, when you have his sort of stuff, you just got to throw it down the middle and let it get to the corner, with that sinker especially, right? And, it's fastball, sinker, slider, everything moves. And he's shown much better command, than he did in the preseason through these first 2 starts. When the competition gets tougher, let's see what it looks like. But 97 with sink is 97 with sink, so he's going to be tough to hit. And I think the sliders look really good so far this year. And in the second start, I thought he was at least as sharp as he was in his first start. And again, it was a slight step up in competition. So this weekend's going to be really big to sort of figure out like who's going to be that Saturday guy and who's going to be that Sunday guy, because both those guys pitched on Saturday. And despite getting the one extra less day of rest for Shores, he was more than fine. So I think Jay told John Eads yesterday that they're going to try to figure out who's going to be the Saturday, who's going to pitch Saturday, who's going to pitch Sunday this week, because now that's kind of a little more up in the air because of, again, Shores having to pitch last Saturday.
Yeah, that's a musical chairs game that we haven't seen a ton of up until the last few years with the Thursday night SEC games, and now a lot of times your rotation gets jumbled a little bit based on days off. So we'll see what happens for LSU on Sunday and what should be a great weather weekend up there in Frisco. Other starter I wanted your thoughts on was the freshman, obviously William Schmidt, and what he did in the game on Monday. The line score was great. It was his first start. It looked good to me. Your thoughts from the press box?
Yeah, it was definitely a positive start for him. The one thing I kind of kept my eye on during the preseason and something that I saw a little bit in this start is that teams can jump on his fastball a little bit. Like if he's not careful and if he just leaves that thing over the plate, teams can hit it. And I think it's not the Chase Shores fastball. You know, there isn't a ton of movement to it. It's a fairly flat pitch. So he has to be able to locate it really well, and especially up in the zone, so he can use that pitch to set up his curveball to put hitters away, right? And like once he was able to even mix in some of his off-speed stuff earlier in counts, that's when you saw more success from him, I thought, in this game. And Nichols doesn't have the greatest offense. And credit to them for jumping on the fastball. Like, they don't see, those guys probably don't see 95, 96 every day. Right. So, I think that's going to be kind of a key for him to like really, use that curveball, use that slider, and it should keep on improving the shape of the fastball, as his career, progresses here, because he has all the talent in the world. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that, for the last few years, probably, he's been able to get away with just blowing fastballs by hitters and just sort of building up and sort of like lean on that pitch more. But now he may have to pitch a little bit more backwards, just so teams can, stay off of his fastball, and he can really utilize it. I think his greatest strength, which for me is his curveball. I think he has one of the best curveballs in the team, if not the country. And it's just an absolutely tremendous pitch. And if he can really mix that in and really get hitters off balance, that's going to be the key to his success as he faces tougher and tougher competition.
He's Koki Riley. You can follow him on Twitter at Koki Riley, Koki. He's there in Texas, following LSU and Dallas Baptist tonight. Do you expect to see Connor Ware on the bump tonight for LSU?
Yep, he's already announced as a starter,
okay.
And it's going to be a very, very important start for him tonight. So, big step up in competition. Obviously, 3 shutout innings against Southern, but and the way he can locate the ball inside, outside, to lefties, to righties, that will hopefully serve him really well in a game like this against Dallas Baptist.
I'm curious your thoughts, because you mentioned this earlier in the interview, and I wanted to eventually get to the offense this weekend. The weather's going to be good. I don't know about the wind. I don't know about the hitter's park or not in Frisco, but certainly the hitting conditions will be better than they've been the last 2 weeks in Baton Rouge. Do you expect some more pop from LSU this weekend?
Yes and no. It's going to be kind of depend on who they face on the mound, like even more than the conditions, right? I think the conditions can help them turn some of those fly balls into home runs, and that's something that they're going to use the last couple of weekends, obviously. But for this weekend in particular, like Nebraska, their strength is probably on the mound. They've really struggled offensively. That's where their struggles have been. And then for Kansas State, they don't really even have starters. It's more, they don't have anyone who's thrown more than 90 innings this season. So they're going to see like a whole bunch of different arms probably in that game, in that one game. So it's a lot of it's going to come down to just how they perform against easily the best pitching they've faced so far this year. I guess they'll have the DBU game under their belt at that point, but you know what I mean. So Well, that Sam Houston game is going to be interesting too, because that's a team that's really struggled. So can they really get their power going in that game? So I think the weather is definitely going to play a factor. But at the end of the day, like, it's how they're going to adjust to this much like higher level of pitching, especially in this DBU game, is like that's really going to determine the power, honestly.
Enjoy the Lone Star State, Koki. I hope to see you up there on Friday. Still to be determined on my end, but I'm planning on it, so hopefully I'll see you up there, and safe travels coming back home.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me on again.
You bet. Koki Riley from The Advocate. Follow him on Twitter at Koki Riley, Koki. Does a great job covering the LSU baseball team. LSU and Dallas Baptist tonight from Globe Life, 7 o'clock first pitch. You can hear that on our sister station, Eagle 98.1. And it'll be we'll broadcast all the games on the LSU Sports Radio Network here locally in Baton Rouge under the Guarantee roof. So LSU and DBU tonight at 7. We'll come back, play some What If Wednesday on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Your buying experience at Genesis of Baton Rouge is going to be luxury in every way. You're going to feel like a guest at the dealership, not necessarily a customer, and their brand ambassadors are going to help you each and every step of that way. That could be in the store. It could be remotely. They're happy to come to you for that test drive. If you look at the website, genesisofbatonrouge.com, and you see whether it's a sedan or an SUV that you'd like to get behind the wheel of, just reach out. They'll come to you. They'll come to your work. They'll come to the house. You can get right behind the wheel. One of their brand ambassadors will point out all the beautiful bells and whistles as well as the incredible safety features of those Genesis vehicles. And if you decide that's what you want, they can do delivery. They can do e-contracts. You never have to set foot on the lot at the dealership if you don't want to. If you would like to, head on by right there across from Women's Hospital, Airline at Piku, and check out that brand new store. Only about 2 years old there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can start that process online, genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
We still got a ton to do here on this Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. LSU ranked number 1 among SEC teams in the 2026 recruiting rankings. We'll talk a little bit about that. Matthew Bruni in 25 minutes. Pro Football Focus, talk about a Saints dream offseason. It revolves around 2 different defensive linemen. We'll dive into that in my SEC Baseball Power Rankings coming your way as well. So lots and lots to do. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. It is Wednesday. It's the bottom of hour number 1. So let's do What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
Alrighty, first one here. What if LSU makes the NIT? I'm assuming they're talking about the men's team. I think the women's team are going to make the actual
I
tournament.
would be surprised if the women's team didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
There would have to be some pretty significant infractions committed in short order for them not to make the NCAA tournament. If the men's team makes the NIT, you can just kind of count me out. I have in the past thought that there was some value in a team reaching the NIT, getting some tournament experience, playing a little bit more, practicing a little bit more. Will Wade's first team, even Matt McMahon's team last year to an extent. At this point, no, because you're overhauling the team every year. Nobody really goes to NIT games. I can't name who won the NIT last year or the year before that or the year before that or ever. I know Mike White's teams at Louisiana Tech generally made some NIT runs.
I'll never forget whenever Kentucky was like the 1 seed and they lost to Robert Morris.
Robert Morris,
I'll never
Bobby
forget that
Moe
one. Yeah.
in Pittsburgh. They had to go on the road to Robert Morris. That may be the only redeeming quality. Well, there's 2 redeeming qualities of the NIT. One, sometimes massive brands have to go play in small gyms. And 2, you get to go play in Madison Square Garden, which, even though no one cares if you win or lose, is still Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
So, that's about it. I can't even try to remotely drum up any interest in the NIT, and I don't want to. And look, Matt McMahon, this is not like off the record stuff. Press conferences, radio appearances, speaking engagements, my pregame show. Like, we didn't come here to play in the NIT. There you go. I don't even know. There was an NITology at one point.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do that. And I do know that the NIT has some different criteria now for how to get in, and you got
I think you have to have a winning record
regular
at
season
least.
conference,
So
and LSU's 500. That's not going to happen. So, I'm not too concerned with that.
Yeah, I'm not really either. This is, like you said, when it's the first or second year a coach is with the team, and that's a good marker for showing that the team is improving. But at this point, this is the third year for Matt McMahon, so going to the NIT for me is not really going to do
Trivia
much.
question: who'd they lose to in the NIT last year?
The North Texas.
Correct. Well done.
Mean Green.
The Mean Green. My only memory from that game, it's vivid. We're in the house, hadn't been it that long. Basketball's on. Myers had just kind of gotten to the point where he could understand like what basketball's going. He had a hoop in the living room, and North Texas started bombing in threes from everywhere in the first half, and he kept cheering every time they'd make one.
Yeah,
we got to work on who shot the ball, not just that it went in the basket. But he was pumped up because the Mean Green were raining them in from all over the place.
Didn't a Johnny Jones team lose to North Texas at home? For some reason, I remember an LSU North Texas game.
No, Johnny Jones beat LSU when he was the head coach at North Texas.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next one here. What if you had to pick a non-weekend starter to become a weekend starter for this LSU team?
So I get the whole roster, and I take out Anderson, Ianson, and Shores.
Yes.
I would probably go with Connor Ware, although William Schmidt is right there on the verge of that. But I would probably go with Ware if he dominates. I still think Jay Johnson would like to use him in the bullpen, but in all the preseason talk I did about this team, and we always talked about Connor Ware being the back-end guy of the bullpen, I did not foresee the freshman dominating to this extent. I did not. I talked about Kason Evans a lot. I wrote about Kason Evans. I talked about him. I said he's going to be good. I didn't quite know that this was the level he would be at. And then Rizzy is way more impactful than I would have imagined to this point. I knew he threw pretty hard. I knew he had a pretty good slider. I did not know if he could command it, and I didn't know what the coaching staff's trust was in him. And Jay Johnson said on Monday that he thinks Rizzy's going to lead the team in appearances. So when we were talking about Connor Ware all of the offseason and in the preseason, I don't think we had I did not, I shouldn't speak for everyone, I did not have a great handle on what the confidence level and the performance level of the freshman arms would be. I wrote on LouisianaSports.net yesterday, I think they might be the best bullpen guys on the team now. So it's a different landscape than it was 3 weeks ago. That leads me to believe that Connor Ware may have a way into the rotation one way or another, more so than when I thought he was anchored in the back end of the bullpen.
All right, next one here. What if Alyssa, your wife, goes into labor while you're in Frisco?
It's a discussion, okay? There's a discussion being had. There's an OB appointment. The OB is awesome. Did not necessarily give us a ton of quality, usable information because she didn't want to feel responsible. She basically said, I don't know what's going to happen, but here's kind of what could happen. So we'll see. To answer the question, if I am in Frisco and she goes into labor, I'm going to get on an app immediately and see if there's a flight like now that I can get on. And if I can't, my dad's going to be there in his car, and I'll just drive his car 6 hours from Frisco to Baton Rouge. Myers, from the time we left the house to the time he was actually born, was about 9 hours. It's only 6 and change from Frisco. Maybe we can make that happen. We'll hope it doesn't, though. That would be
unfortunate. There you go.
Well said.
All right, how about this one? What if you shoot 95 at PGA Frisco?
That would be a bad round. That'd be poor playing. That'd be poor performance.
I'm heard it's a tough course.
It's not out of the question. They say the greens are ridiculously undulating. I've looked at a 4K flyover of the course with the yardages. I feel like I can handle it, but that remains to be seen once I get on there and start.
Your dad's playing though, right?
He is.
And he's going to play for the back tees.
He's
probably.
not. He said as of yesterday he's going to play from 5,700 yards, which is an incredible development.
I can't believe it. I really can't.
He's talked about the up tees like they are just completely off limits for years, and apparently this is the one course that's going to bring him up a couple tee boxes, which is great. I want to play the course very, very badly. We'll see over the next 24 hours whether or not I have the opportunity to do so. It's very much up in the air at this point.
All right, last one here. What if Jay Johnson actually scheduled more tougher non-conference series?
So that's a fair question looking at this schedule. You're looking at Purdue, Fort Wayne, Omaha, and then I don't even know who they have in 2 weeks. I know that it's not anything to write home about. That tells you all you need to know about the series. I don't even know who it is. You can look it up. I do know that the first weekend that this Purdue Fort Wayne series from
North Dakota State. They play two North Dakota State, 2 games, yeah. And then North Alabama, a 3-game set.
I don't know about that one. I can tell you for sure that the first series of the year, they had a different team scheduled that underwent a coaching change. The head coach did not want to play his first weekend at the head coach of this program at Alec Box Stadium. I don't know who it is, and Jay wouldn't divulge that information, but they got that weekend pulled out from under them. And they were almost at the point for opening weekend where they were going to have to call someone and jump in a round robin away from the box just to get 3 games in. So they're going to have to go to someone who was playing a 2-game series, say, hey, can we jump in and play Friday, Saturday, Sunday as part of a doubleheader all 3 days, whatever. Like they were close to having to do that because of the scheduling rearrangement. They're going to play a tournament every year. They're going to Round Rock again next year. That probably means they're headed back to Houston the year after that. They're going to go to Texas and play a weekend every year. And I'd like one really solid weekend if you could. I'm okay if the other 2 are pretty average. You're going to get so much competition in SEC play that your RPI points and all that kind of stuff is going to take care of itself over the course of league play. I realize this is not a very popular opinion, but I'm perfectly okay with a complete breather series where you can play a lot of guys, get some guys rest, get some guys confidence. That's okay with me because the league is so good. If that wasn't the case, then you would have to think twice about it.
This is just from the chat. I see Bilbo T. Baggins. I just looked it up real quick. He says it's Stephen F. Austin. They do have a new coach this year for this season.
Okay.
So that obviously it's not confirmed or anything, but that Stephen F. Austin definitely a step up than from Purdue Fort Wayne, I would say.
That's a Texas team that has guys that play year round and they've been practicing at least. I mean, the guys, the schools you bring in here haven't been able to practice half the time. So I'm not as concerned with it. I understand that people get tired of the run rules and the blowouts in February and early March. That is a completely reasonable take on the matter, but those 30 games are so ruthless that it really does everything you need for your team. I like the weekends in Texas. I like the fact that it feels kind of regional-like, where you prepare for a different team every day, and you sometimes get to play in a big league stadium or a minor league park in this case. I think if they mix that in with one good one, I'm good, and then you get to SEC play, and you just figure out how to win 18 or 20 of those things and set yourself up for the postseason.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, Kim Mulkey seems to have the same mindset in terms of her scheduling, but and then to me, and from my perspective, I look at, especially with the women's team, the SEC is it's not as good of a conference as compared to the baseball conference, but it's still one of the best in women's basketball. And you're going to get tested at least 4 or 5 times probably when you play conference play. But to me, I think the value of playing 2 or 3, maybe even 4 or 5, solid opponents from a Power 5 league, I think it's worth it. I don't think the downsides are that bad because it's still non-conference, so it's not going to hurt you that much, but it will raise your strength of schedule, all those statistics. So to me, I think that it helps. In baseball, it's probably a little different just because of the SEC is just so powerful, and even if you reach a certain amount of conference games, you're going to be a regional host. So
they're the only 30 that really matter. It just is what it is. You set yourself up by what you do in those. Now, if you're LSU last year and you go 13-17 in the league and you've lost 6 midweek games, well, when we can have a conversation. But the 13-17 in the league is what got you to that point. So it is what it is. That's What If Wednesday here on this Wednesday. On 3, thinks pretty highly of LSU's recruiting class to this point. We'll tell you why coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carbo and his team, phenomenal to work with. If you're a business owner and you feel like you just pay a ton in insurance, you're not alone. Have you explored a captive? Do you know what a captive does? Many of you may. Many of you may not. It may not be something that's on your radar. For the longest time, when you've dealt with insurance, you know that renewal's coming around. You get your broker to get you a few quotes. You may get a competing bid that gets sent in. You look at the premium. You hope the coverages are good. You sign off on it, and we'll see you next year. That's the way a lot of business owners handle insurance. But a captive could be the most cost-effective way to handle your risk management. You got to qualify, and you've got to be sure that you've got an appetite for some risk. But if you can, and you do, then you may have a real solution to some insurance pain that's been caused with this market over the last decade. Call Jonathan Carbo and his team. Say, hey, I'd like to talk about this captive. And he'll see if you're a fit. They do it all the time. It's HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group right here in Baton Rouge for your property and casualty insurance, as well as your group and employee benefits. It's a one-stop shop for all things insurance. It's the Highland Insurance Group.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Closing up hour number 1 here on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. I got Matthew Bruni coming up in 10 minutes. Every once in a while I do a segment on this show, and I feel like I do shed some light on some numbers, not necessarily to shock you. Like, it's something that you understand, but every once in a while just an illustration of a point helps to reinforce it. This is one of those situations. On3 just had a big shuffle of their player rankings, which in turn shuffled the school rankings for the 2026 recruiting class. Those are the folks who are in their last semester as juniors in high school right now that will be seniors come the fall. So it's the next class that will sign on the dotted line. And LSU is the number 3 class in the country on On3, the best class in the Southeastern Conference to this point. It's very early, I know, but that point still stands. Behind USC, behind Oregon, who are, of course, Big Ten schools at this point. But I bring this up because I want to list off the current commitments that LSU has in this class that is ranked 3rd in the nation. Richard Anderson goes to Carr in New Orleans. Aiden Hall goes to Carr in New Orleans. Those guys are top 75 national players. Bryson Martinez goes to East Ascension in Gonzales. Kenny Darby goes to Airline in Bossier. Ja'Kai Anderson goes to McDonough 35 in New Orleans. And Jalen Chapman goes to Warren Easton in New Orleans. What do all those players have in common? Pretty simple. They're from Louisiana. LSU, with 6 commitments, it's really early. I get it. I'm not declaring LSU the recruiting national champs, the conference champions of recruiting for a class that doesn't sign for another 10 months. But what I'm telling you is you can just go get, and these aren't even the top players in the state of Louisiana. You understand that. Lamar Brown and Blaine Bradford aren't in this list. You can just go get 6 of the top 8 players in the state. And at this point in the calendar, you're the best class in the whole conference. That's oftentimes what this state can produce. And I'm not breaking news to any of you that are listening right now saying, oh man, Louisiana's got some pretty good football recruits. Like you already knew that. But every once in a while, it helps to drive that point home that, man, the lifeblood of this thing just pumps and pumps and pumps and pumps. And I would suggest if you tomorrow landed those 2 5-star recruits from right here in Baton Rouge, both of whom everyone thinks LSU has a really good chance to land, you would have the top class in the country right now with no players outside the state of Louisiana. The farthest you've got to drive from Nicholson to one of these campuses is Kenny Darby and Airline, and that's less than 4 hours. It's just a really, really massive advantage for LSU, and every once in a while it helps to kind of paint that picture. So you got to keep going, and you understand that you do have to supplement the class with folks from national scale, and LSU's brand and their ability to play in the NIL space will allow them to do that often, not every time. What do we talk about when Bryce Underwood decommitted? I don't know if LSU's going to be able to play in the waters of the 5-star quarterback from all the way across the country. That might be a bridge too far in this era. But you can still play in this sandbox in Louisiana, and you can cherry pick. You can go get DJ Pickett. You can make that work. You can go get national recruits. But if you can continue to fill the pipeline with the Louisiana kids, you're going to field a really talented roster far more often than you don't. And I think that LSU probably branched away from that a little bit in 2021, 2022. And I think they're starting to hone it back in based on the staff you've put together with Frank Wilson, with Corey Raymond, with Brad Davis, with Bo Davis. Joe Sloan's been in this state a long time. You've got a lot of guys. Blake Baker has spent a lot of time here. His wife's from here. You've assembled a staff that knows how important this place is, and knowing it is one thing, capitalize on it is another. You're doing that right now with the way that this class is shaping up. And it's remarkable to me to sometimes look at things and go, man, you've got the best looking early class in the country, as well, in the conference, I should say. Best looking early class in the conference, and you haven't dipped your toe out of the water of Louisiana once. It's pretty powerful stuff. Long way to go. Got to keep recruiting. But this staff is doing a good job of that, securing commitments. Just got to get to December before you get that ink to dry on the dotted line. If you're looking for our LSU football content, you can find it on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. Always appreciate y'all checking that out. Subscribe, like, rate, review. All that helps us get our content in front of as many people as we possibly can. Looking for Saints content? Hunt on Saints is where you can find that as well. We'll talk some Saints in hour number 2. We'll also talk a little bit LSU DBU on the baseball diamond. Matthew Bruni is going to join us. SEC Baseball Power Rankings. All that after Sports Center.
The Hunt Palmer Show.